We've survived the bye-pocalypse. Now it's just a bunch of injuries that we have to figure out. Here are the must-add players for fantasy football this week. Waiver wire time. It is going into week 9 in the NFL and in the fantasy football season, so we're getting down to crunch time. We need to start winning these games with the playoffs now on the horizon. And so we can't just, bye week, got us. Nope, can't be doing that. This is now a time to step our game up. Let's go to the waiver wire. And I give this big, you know what, we need to step up. We need these wins. This is a tough one, admittedly, to give out. Jonna is in a league where Stafford and Lawrence and Stroud and Goff were available. That's fantastic. Pick all of them up ahead of this one. But our waiver wire target, because we use the cutoff of 35% in Yahoo leagues, it's Tua. So hopefully you're set at quarterback this week, is what I'm saying. It's not ideal. But, I mean, look, they just had a pretty good game against Atlanta, and they are facing a Ravens defense that has struggled this season. So I don't look at this as the oh shit moment that it maybe would be if we had to start Tua Tagovailoa at our quarterback spot. I think that because of the matchup and because we've maybe got a little bit of momentum rolling here, I think that Tua is probably a decent play for you this week. But hopefully there are some other options that you can go with. At wide receiver, there's 3. It is first, Alec Pierce, 15% owned with the Indianapolis Colts. He has been targeted 19 times in the last 3 weeks. He hasn't really had a bust game this season. Like there have been very few league winning weeks. It's been a lot of 5 to 7, but he has some big play potential and he has a good matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. We just saw Green Bay get their offense right against Pittsburgh. I know that the Steelers, for forever, have a reputation of a stingy defense that is really difficult to play against, but that ain't this team at all. You can throw on these guys very successfully. And so I think Alec Pierce has a good chance to have a good day and help you out in fantasy. Also 15% owned, it's Malik Washington with Miami. He's been targeted at least 5 times in every game but 2 this season. And again, they have a really good matchup against the Ravens here. So I think Malik Washington, maybe this isn't a league winner type of a move. This is just, I think, a relatively safe floor for him and a player that you can plug into your lineup, just going to keep the chains moving and help you out in your matchups here this week. Pierce, I think, has a bit more league-winning upside, or week-winning upside, I should say. Washington is just getting us through the week. This one, this next one, I probably should have put number 1, because this is probably the main priority of the week, depending on where you're at. But it's Christian Watson with the Green Bay Packers. And if you watched my fantasy football content last year, you'll know I'm a fan of this guy. And maybe it didn't produce the way that I thought it did, or thought it would a season ago, and then he got hurt. But he looked solid in a return to the lineup for the Green Bay Packers. He is a high-level receiver, and if you look at the fantasy matchup for Green Bay the rest of the way, it's actually kind of filled with some defenses that you can take advantage of, including the Carolina Panthers, who they play this week. And so you look at it after that, it's the Eagles, who are a good defense, but you can throw on them. Then you got the Giants, the Vikings, who we're not really all that afraid of, the Lions, who have been giving up some points, the Bears, that's a defense we can throw on, Denver, that's tough. But then Bears, Ravens, Vikings to close out the season. So fantasy playoffs, it is Broncos, Bears, Ravens. And Christian Watson, the problem is that you are guessing along with where the volume goes in a really potentially high level offense that is the Green Bay Packers. And there are some weeks where it kills you because it's, for whatever reason, the defense is taking Watson away and now Dobbs is the main target. Well, now it's Golden. Now it's, that has always been the frustration with fantasy receivers with Green Bay. But Watson, I still think, has the potential to kind of outshine the rest of them. And he has a connection, obviously, with Jordan Love. This is an ad that helps you not just this week, but for the rest of the season. So Christian Watson is absolutely someone who we should be picking up in basically any league and in any format right now. At running back, Tyjae Spears, 32% owned. 12 opportunities last week, and he gets into the end zone. I know it's not a good offense, but fantasy points can come from not good offenses. And Spears, I have said this for weeks. I am assuming this is the last week our guy's ending up on our waiver wire segment. He is just too good to keep ending up in at our threshold below 35%. I think he's a talented kid. I think he's going to get more and more opportunities as he gets healthier, as he gets back into playing shape, and as the Titans want to see what they have and help out their young quarterback try to not get another coach fired. So I think that the volume is certainly going to be there for one Tyjae Spears, and he should be owned in way more leagues than 32%. Then it's Bam Knight, 20% owned. Led the Cardinals in rushing last game, probably dropped a lot because of a lot of buys. It's a great matchup against the Cowboys on Monday night, and one that I think he can really take advantage of. So if we were relying on, say, a Cam Scadaboo or someone like that, I think these are a couple of really good replacements to kind of fill that void in your league. This next one's a bit of a luxury play. It is Tank Bigsby. He is owned in 17% of leagues playing for the Eagles. Obviously, Saquon Barkley is the guy in Philadelphia. But I do think that this last game was a bit of a course correct for the Eagles to get them back on track, understanding where their strengths are, and that's being a run-first football team. And so with that, if something happens to Saquon, or if they recognize that maybe we shouldn't be running Saquon into the ground and we have a viable backup here, Tank Bigsby, I think, is going to get a lot of opportunities with this team, especially if something happens to Saquon. And we already saw a bit of a hint of that when he goes down with a hamstring injury in week number 8. If you can afford a stash on a bye, this is someone who I think has the potential to be a steal if anything opens up for him. And I am assuming that more opportunities are going to come his way as this season kind of winds down. The last one, bit more of a home run swing, Emmanuel Wilson with Green Bay, 5% owned. I don't think he'll hit double digits again this week or at any point this season. But again, a decent handcuff, a decent stash, bit more of a speed option in that Green Bay offense. And with Josh Jacobs just getting bottled up in that game, it was interesting to see that they just went with Wilson and let him go out there, change the pace a little bit, and have some success against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So again, don't pick him up assuming that we're getting a touchdown and 60 yards every week, but I think you can pick him up again in a Bigsby role where he's going to get a little bit in the offense, but if something happens to the main guy, we're really trusting this running back in our lineups every single week. And then it is Juwan Johnson at tight end. Our first tight end, Juwan Johnson, with the New Orleans Saints. 32% owned, 15 targets in the last 2 weeks. Not many other options on this team. It's a tough matchup against the Rams, but of the tight ends that are available, I think he has the easiest path to volume. He is solid and not a league winner, but again, just going to keep the chains moving for your team. And then I have Theo Johnson, 24% owned with the Giants. I think the kid's pretty good. Only 4 targets last week. This is a beat-up offense, and I think he's solid. You have a relatively-ish difficult matchup with San Francisco. We'll talk about them in a second. But then after that, it's Chicago and Green Bay. So a couple of teams that you've been able to pass on this year. I think Theo Johnson, again, he is a young tight end, but tight ends are a really good safety blanket for rookie quarterbacks, especially ones that have just lost their best wide receiver and running back. So I think Theo Johnson gets a little bit more in the underneath game to help them kind of keep the chains moving a little bit and keep them ahead of the sticks with the injury to Cam Scadaboo. And then our streaming defenses for the week, I have 2. First, it is San Francisco. They are 20% owned. I have them going up against the Giants. It's a beat-up Giants offense like we've talked about. San Francisco's beat up as well, and it was a bit of a concerning performance against the Houston Texans, but CJ Stroud ain't walking through that door, right? So I think that I will take Saleh against a rookie quarterback and take my chances there. Also, there's just not a lot of great streaming options this week. The other one is Jacksonville against the Raiders, 8% owned. I would imagine Jacksonville, the combination of a bad game against the Rams and then a bye, that's why that number is so low. I think it's an okay defense against a turnover-prone and brutal Raiders offense. I think this defense isn't that bad, so I think it's a pretty good pickup if you want to roll with Jacksonville this week as the streaming defense. So, again, to recap, our quarterback this week is Tua Tagovailoa, 19% owned with Miami. 3 receivers to look at: Alec Pierce from the Colts, Malik Washington with the Dolphins, and Christian Watson for Green Bay. Our running backs this week that we're looking at: Tyjae Spears and Bam Knight. These are players that will help you this week and for future weeks as well. Tank Bigsby and Emmanuel Wilson, a little bit more of the luxury purchases and the players that we're going to roll with if we can afford some stashes and some handcuffs. At tight end, Juwan Johnson, 32% owned with the Saints, and Theo Johnson, 24% owned with the Giants. And two streaming defenses to look at this week, the San Francisco 49ers against the Giants and the Jacksonville Jaguars against the Vegas Raiders. San Francisco, 20% owned, and Jacksonville, 8% owned.